Shout out to Jeannie Schmidt, who with Cynthia were the bulwark backbone of this effort to build this magnificent meeting. Let's recognize them. So Cynthia suggested that if you really have a united front, you have everybody involved. So I'm going to quickly read off the endorsers of this meeting, and if anybody identifies with them, stand up and applaud. The Curtin Foundation, San Francisco Bay Area National Lawyers Guild, Mobilization to Free Mumia Abu Jamal, Black Alliance for Peace, Socialist Beginning Code, who with Cynthia are the co-work backbone of this effort to build this magnificent meeting. Let's recognize them. Syria Solidarity Movement, Peace and Justice Center, Peace and Freedom Party of Alameda County, U.S. Peace Council, Bion USA, Haiti Action Committee, Berkeley Fellowship of Unitarian Universal Social Justice Committee, Task Force on the Americas, Mount Diablo Peace and Justice Center, Israel Party, San Jose Peace and Justice Center, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Defending Rights and Dissent, Meiklejohn Civil Liberties Institute, Santa Clara County Green Party, Project Veterans for Peace Chapters East Bay, Answer Coalition, which is Act Now to Stop War and End Racism, Party for Socialism and Liberation, and the Bay Area Committee to Free Julian Assange. That's the beginning of the united front that we need to bring Julian Assange home. We have a relatively short program tonight. By the way, I'm Jeff Mackler. I'm on the National Coordinating Committee of the AssangeDefense.org. And for 35 years, I've been the director of the Mobilization to Free Mumia Abu Jamal, and I haven't given up on that. So here's the program in brief. We're going to hear from Ellsberg. Dan Ellsberg joins with Alice Walker to my left, and Noam Chomsky as the co-national chairs of AssangeDefense.org. Their help has been critical in bringing on a whole broad new layer. Dan will be followed by Alice Walker, and then Cynthia Papermaster, Code Pink, Women for Peace. She always insists I say men are in the organization too. Mumia Abu Jamal, a journalist, a political prisoner, will give us greetings from afar. Dennis Bernstein fell ill and sent his apologies. He is the host of KPFA's Flashpoints and has built this meeting a long defender of every just cause and a muckraker par excellence. Joe Lombardo will send greetings. He's the national coordinator of United National Anti-War Coalition. And here to my right is Nozomi Hayase. She's the author of WikiLeaks, the global fourth estate history is happening. We told Nozomi that she had 3 minutes. She was speaking, and I said, no, you got to take 4. And she said, modestly, I'll speak slowly. But you have the floor, and thank you so much for being with us. Noam Chomsky is sending greetings, and then you're going to hear from the Shiptons, Gabrielle the mother, and John Shipton the father. Let's welcome all the speakers, and let's begin with Daniel Ellsberg on screen.
There's going to be some feedback on this. We can't do anything about it. It's a hum, and I'm sorry.
Here's the hum.
Hello, I'm Dan Ellsberg, and I want to welcome here tonight John Shipton and Gabriel Shipton, the father and brother of Julian Assange. I'm hoping they will visit me in my home when they come to the Bay Area here before long on this. journey of fundraising for a defense that I am very supportive of. Julian Assange, who is facing the same charges that I did 50 years ago this month. I was the first to be prosecuted under the Espionage Act for giving information to the American public in order actually to reveal war crimes, crimes against peace, deceptions of the public, as Julian did in 2010, giving information from Chelsea Manning and Bradley Manning. And 50 years ago this month, actually, the Solicitor General of the United States, Irwin Griswold, former Dean of Harvard Law School, was arguing to the Supreme Court that any further revelation of the information that I had given, which was top secret, or top secret sensitive, I had given to the New York Times, would cause irreparable, irreversible damage, immediate harm to the national security of the United States. That was nonsense. And indeed, in the 50 years since then, not one single sentence has been shown to have been properly classified at that point. It was all 3 years old, or in some cases, decades longer than that. And as Griswold himself admitted decades later, he had never felt there was any harm to the United States from this. In fact, he said, I don't know anyone who ever thought so. An odd thing for him to say, because he had been the one telling the Supreme Court that in fact it was causing immediate irreparable harm. Now, I was then prosecuted after the Supreme Court denied the injunction that Griswold was after. 12 felony counts, totaling a possible sentence of 115 years. Julian is facing 175. It's inflation over time here. And but essentially the same charges that I faced exactly, and as wrongly based, as unconstitutional as in my own case. I say that because 50 years of research into that particular law, for which I was the first to be prosecuted for leaking, has made me aware that the use of the Espionage Act, not against spies, but against someone who's given information to the American public, either a leaker or a whistleblower, is clearly a violation of the First Amendment, freedom of the press and freedom of speech. In Julian's case, the prosecution is of a publisher, like the New York Times, with whom he shared information, in fact, along with other newspapers. They haven't yet been indicted, but Julian has. So he's the first case of a publisher being indicted, whereas I was the first case of a source being indicted. Against me, almost 24 people have been indicted since as sources, and yet the Supreme Court has never yet addressed the question of the constitutionality of those prosecutions. They haven't been taken by the Supreme Court. If Julian Assange is extradited and prosecuted here, he will probably be convicted at the lower level. And yet, for a number of reasons, that case, he should be not extradited, he should be free with his partner and 2 children right now. And I'll mention 3 reasons for that right now. First of all, he will not be able to explain why he did what he did any more than any of the sources were able to tell the jury, because that's not allowed under the Espionage Act. Motivation, intention, impact are irrelevant to the case, as my prosecutor told the judge. And that's been true in every other. Obviously, that cannot be a fair trial for a whistleblower. So Ed Snowden could not get a fair trial here, and Julian Assange could not get a fair trial. Second, the use of the Espionage Act as if it were a British-type Official Secrets Act, criminalizing any and all release to the public of information that some government official has stamped secret, almost always because it's potentially embarrassing to the government not to keep it from an enemy or a rival power. That's not to say that there are no legitimate secrets. It is to say that about 5% have been estimated of the current classified information qualifies for classification even at the time that it is stamped. And a few years later, almost none of it is, perhaps a tenth of that, as Griswold later admitted. So, in short, Julian, again, like all these others, has been indicted with an application of a law that is clearly unconstitutional in the light of our First Amendment, which Britain doesn't have and most countries don't have. But here he is as a non-American, trying to bring him back here to prosecute him in a country where that prosecution for being a publisher of information is clearly a violation of our First Amendment freedom of the press. Finally, in his particular case, it's been testified under oath in Spanish courts and referred to in his extradition hearings. He was subject to the same criminal activities that I was during my trial: warrantless wiretapping, total surveillance of his conversations, even with his lawyers and his doctors. That goes beyond what I experienced, except that in my case, actually, the president sent people to burglarize my former psychoanalyst office. Similar, again, to their interest in his doctor's relations. Information they wanted to get to manipulate me into silence or to blackmail me. And finally, there were discussions of poisoning him or kidnapping him. In my own case, a key aspect in the charges being dropped was that a dozen CIA assets had been brought up from Miami to Washington on May 3rd, 1972, to incapacitate Daniel Ellsberg totally. Well, all of this added up to what my judge at the time called a totality of circumstances that constituted, he called it bizarre, and clearly a process here which offends a sense of justice. Every aspect of the prosecution of Julian Assange offends a sense of justice. Above all, in this country, but really in any country in the world. And if he is successfully extradited against the decision of the British judge on appeal here by the Trump administration and now the Biden administration, appeal against that decision of the British judge in an attempt to extradite him. If he is extradited, prosecuted, and convicted, it will be the first instance of a journalist, not just a source like me, but a journalist being prosecuted for truthful revelation of information. The First Amendment of our Constitution, the foundation of our democracy and our republic, will have been effectively rescinded. So it's of interest above all to journalists in the United States, but really to journalists throughout the world, for whom this would be a terrible precedent. It would be imitated all over the world by countries that otherwise regard themselves as democracies. It's in the interest of our democracy and of journalism to assure that the cause for which John Shipton and Gabriel Shipton are engaged in right now should prevail.
Thank you, Dan Ellsberg. Am I on? How about now? Great. Our next speaker, Pulitzer Prize novelist, poet, social justice fighter, lifelong activist in the struggle for humanity's advancement, Alice Walker. I met Alice 65 years ago, and she hasn't lost a step. Welcome, Alice Walker.
Thank you. Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's been all those years ago. But look at us, we're still here. And you know, actually what really strikes me sometimes is that it feels like we are the same people. Don't you feel that sometimes? I mean, Yeah, but some of us had to have died, you know, I mean, but here we are. I mean, we look at each other and we see actually the same people who we were students, you know, and they were trying to tell us. One of my teachers, by the way, my favorite teacher was Howard Zinn. Oh! And he used to drag a couple of us to all these incredible meetings with people just like us, you know, but I didn't know that then. I thought, who are these people that they care, you know, about the students in the South, the Black students in the South, for instance. But what is lovely is coming in here today and actually seeing us still where we were. That's right, still wanting justice, still finding the, you know, places in the whole system. Why are you doing that? Are you telling me to stop already? You right there. Put this up? Oh, well. Okay. Some people do this. Anyway, so I'm very happy to be here with John Shipton and Gabriel, and I would like very much at some point to see Gabriel's namesake, who is little Gabriel, Julian Assange's son, one of his children. There's something so incredibly moving to me and hopeful to know that Julian Assange has actually children, has a partner, has, one hopes, very happy days. Because it says something about the spirit that we need as we continue to struggle against some of the most evil things on this planet. And I've noticed this same kind of, it's indefatigable energy of love and compassion and smarts in Mumia Abu-Jamal, who you'll be hearing later, I mean, who has a kind of humor, actually. Because, you know, at some point, I suppose, you have to have some humor or you just die. I've gone to visit both of these incredible men in prison. When I went to visit Mumia the first time, just before coming out of, you know, wherever they were keeping him, they made him go through all of these incredibly dehumanizing exercises to prove he didn't have weapons. I mean, like, how could he? He was completely chained. And also, I think the same with Julian, there is a sense of, you know, having your self-respect, you know, having your own sense of what is right to guide you, which is what I feel is possibly true of the people in this room, that somehow something guided you here, something let you know that you could not sit by and watch this man die, basically, in prison, when we could together possibly free him. And it's not impossible. I mean, the thing about optimists, the thing about optimists is that often they say about us that we are just, you know, crazy. Because look at what's coming down on us all the time. But we have something in us. You know, and it's a wonderful thing. We have something in us that says we are going to challenge this. We are going to prevail. And we may, you know, be knocked down as many times as we have been knocked down. And how many times have we been knocked down? Without number. But we keep going. And this is one of the most beautiful things about the human spirit. You know, I was watching a documentary about Julian just last night, and they were trying, you know, all the images, for instance, I wish I could remember what it's called, but all the images of him were scowling, looking mean, squinched up eyes, you know, like he was about to, you know, stab somebody. Not one image like this. You know, not one image showing a human being. You know, not one image showing this is somebody's father. This is somebody's partner. This is somebody who loves to be in laughter and joy, you know, as he's doing his work. And that's part of the key for us. While we're doing our work, to remember to be joyful, you know, to remember that, yeah, I mean, they put they lay on all of us. Like we grieve, you know, it's not, you know, he's in prison, but we are also, part of us has to be with him and with Mumia. I mean, it's just who we are. We can't help it. But at the same time, we understand that what they are struggling for is our joy, you know, is our ability to feel, you know, gratitude for being able, like today, to come together and to make it be known to anybody who can listen or who can tune in. But no, we don't agree with these policies that hurt our people, that imprison our people, that kill our people, and really deeply, and this is really, you know, hard, deeply hurt our children. I mean, I can hardly stand thinking of Julian's children. I mean, what are they to make of this? Who are they to be when they grow up? I mean, how can they look, you know, the world in the face, knowing what it has tried to do, so much of it has tried to do. But then there we are, hallelujah. And they can look at us. Yes. So I really feel like we are, you know, we are what we are. You know, we're the people in this room. What can we do? But this has always been true. You know, when Frederick Douglass came up from slavery, he talked to people just like us. Well, mostly just like you. But he did. You know, he talked to us in small groups who were determined to end enslavement of human beings. And they did it. They freed a whole world of people. And this is what we have to do for Julian. We have to get him out of there, and we can. And we must never think we can't. Never. Thanks.
Thank you, Alice Walker. How many of you remember Kevin Z's and Margaret Flowers? They were the young people who occupied the Venezuelan embassy at the request of the Venezuelan government when the Trump administration announced that they could appoint and would appoint the president of Venezuela. And they charged Margaret and Kevin with horrendous crimes, and we organized 8 meetings in the Bay Area. We raised thousands of dollars, and guess what? We won. We brought them home. And now, the US government, on June 12th, 2020, stopped an airplane carrying a Venezuelan diplomat, Alex Saab, rerouted it to a small African country, and took this Venezuelan diplomat prisoner, where he remains today deadly ill with cancer. We want to free him too, and every other political prisoner. And if you want to find out how you can do it, that guy in the center of the room, Roger Harris, has all the information. So check out with him, get some of the literature, and let's free all of the US political prisoners. Our next speaker warned me when she jumped on board to enthusiastically build this tour of the shipment. She said, I'm a stickler for details. I follow through on everything. And sure enough, the reason you're all here is because people like Cynthia Papermaster and Jeannie Schmidt put their life energy into this, in the media, in every aspect, every detail. Let's welcome Cynthia Papermaster from Code Pink, Women for Peace, and Men Too.
Good afternoon, everybody. People are making their way up to the front with a beautiful photo of Julian Assange. And I'd like them, and everyone here, if you want to say together with me, we are all Julian Assange. We are all Julian Assange. We are all Julian Assange. Thank you very much. Thank you. Code Pink is in the house. I have 3 minutes, so I'm going to talk fast. First, I want to announce an event that we're putting together with the Assange Defense Committee on July 3rd, which is Julian Assange's birthday. We're going to gather at the Women's Building on 18th Street in the Mission District of San Francisco at 7 p.m. for a candlelight gathering, and we will have birthday cake for Julian. I invite you all to come. I want you to put your email address on the Code Pink sign-up sheet at our table, which is very pink right out there, so we can notify you about this event. On your seat, you have instructions on how to write to Julian Assange. It's complicated. That's why we have a flyer for it. Please send him a letter and follow the instructions precisely according to the flyer. There's more of these at our table back there if you didn't get one. I would like very much for you to go to the Code Pink website where we have a petition calling for Julian Assange's freedom. We ask you to email the Attorney General, call the Department of Justice, and we give you the phone number for that. And finally, at our table, we have letters to the Department of Justice and the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. I want every one of those letters signed today. There's enough of you here that we can do that, and we will send hundreds of letters. Why are we asking for the Department of Justice to do something? Because it's the United States government who is responsible for the persecution of Julian Assange, and they have to lay off. Obama said, we're not going to prosecute, because they realized that doing so means that all journalists would be in danger. All journalists and the freedom of the press would be in danger if they went after one publisher. So the point I'm trying to make to you is that we can get him out, and we need to get him out. Finally, I don't know if I have another minute here. I'm going to quickly read the letter to the Attorney General because it really summarizes what we're trying to get them to do, and that is the key. It's Biden and Merrick Garland, our Attorney General, who are responsible, and we can move them. We have to. Dear Attorney General Merrick Garland, I'm firmly opposed to the extradition of Julian Assange to the United States, where he is facing 18 charges under the Espionage Act and could be sentenced to up to 175 years in prison. I call on you to drop extradition proceedings. Assange's alleged crimes date back to 2010, when the organization he founded, WikiLeaks, transmitted documents to media outlets including Le Monde, The Guardian, and the New York Times. The documents, which were provided to WikiLeaks by whistleblower Chelsea Manning. And we should thank Chelsea Manning. Chelsea Manning risked her life. She risked her life and she survived due to us, due to what we did to stand behind her. And she's free today, and the same thing for Julian. So back to this. Chelsea Manning provided 250,000 U.S. diplomatic cables and U.S. Army reports about military operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, exposed cases of torture, abduction, and disappearances. How many people here have seen the Collateral murder video? Yeah. If you've seen that, and it's so horrible to watch, you wish you hadn't seen it, because the United States military shoots down innocent people in the streets in Iraq, including children, including journalists. Yeah. So thank you, Chelsea Manning, and thank you, Julian Assange. Back to the letter. The publication of these documents by media outlets was clearly in the public interest and not an act of espionage. Not an act of espionage. Julian Assange's contribution to journalism is undeniable. He has won numerous journalistic awards. You can come up here, Lucky. You can let Lucky go. He can come up here. Sorry. He has won numerous journalist awards and is nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, which is richly deserved. If the legal persecution of Assange continues, investigative journalism and press freedom will be the victims, since news organizations regularly rely on and publish classified information to serve the public interest. I am also concerned about Assange's health. UN Special Rapporteur Nils Melzer reported Assange has been deliberately exposed to inhuman and degrading treatment that could be described as psychological torture. I urge you to respect the principles of freedom of expression and the defense of journalism, and to respect Assange's human rights. Rather than being extradited to the United States to be tried and imprisoned, we urge you to drop the extradition proceedings and all charges against Julian Assange. Sincerely, you. All of you sign these letters, please. Thank you.
When you invited Lucky up here, did he have speaking rights? Okay, I'm sorry for the interruption. That was Nathan Fuller, who is Executive Director of the Courage Foundation and Assange Defense. We're live streaming the event, but we lost the video, so he called, and we're working on that technological problem so we can blast this all over the country and the world. Our next speaker is Mumia Abu-Jamal, an innocent political prisoner and journalist. I began working on Mumia's case 35 years ago. I was convinced he was an innocent man, and the only way we could free him was to build a mass movement to do it. We've had demonstrations of 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, and 25,000 in San Francisco and Philadelphia. How many of you were at that San Francisco demonstration to free Mumia Abu-Jamal? We thought we had lost the case in the court, but the struggle continued, and we were able to get Mumia back into court on the grounds that the Supreme Court ruled that you can't be a prosecutor and a judge in the same case. And Ron Castillo prosecuted Mumia's case, became a Supreme Court judge, refused to recuse himself, and voted to execute Mumia Abu-Jamal. All the issues that he litigated are back in court. We're fighting for Mumia's freedom. In Philadelphia, the racist cop who became mayor, Frank Rizzo, had his statue taken down and replaced by a Move Mumia banner. So with that, let's hear from Mumia Abu-Jamal, an innocent political prisoner, and we want to bring him home.
Julian Assange's gift. Julian Assange, one of the founders of the internet transparency outfit WikiLeaks, is widely regarded by the corporate press as an enemy. Why? I believe the answer can be gleaned by history of journalistic breakthroughs that came not from the established press, but through alternative and underground presses. At the height of the Black liberation struggles of the 1960s, Liberation News Service produced film interviews with people like Huey P. Newton, one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party. It was a powerful breakthrough. During the so-called War on Drugs, a little-known journalist named Gary Webb from a tiny West Coast newspaper, the San Jose Mercury News, broke the story of CIA drug running to black gangsters in Cali. Webb won a Pulitzer, and then came the counterattack. The big news guns, big papers in New York, Washington, and LA attacked his reporting. Mercury cut him loose, and thereafter, news of an alleged suicide came. What does this tell us? That's what new news sources break through against the grain of the establishment. Now think back to the Iraq War. Remember? Weapons of mass destruction. How about Dick Cheney's predictions that they'll greet us as liberators. Julian's WikiLeaks broke through the state's lies like a battering ram. And then WikiLeaks released a video of a 2007 shoot-up of Iraqi civilians by U.S. troops in an AH Apache helicopter gunship. The accompanying audio of laughter and guffaws as they shoot
This is a
civilians.
call from Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Mahanoy. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
Told a truth that only WikiLeaks could tell. In this wise, Assange and his pals at WikiLeaks showed the world the real face of war. He showed the face of the U.S. empire. And he's been treated like an enemy ever since. He broke through. And the fiends of corporate media, like the state itself, will never forgive him. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
Free Mumia. Free Mumia. Before we go to our next speaker, I have a complaint to make about someone in the audience. Instead of paying $20 at the door, he put in 4 $100 bills. I think that person deserves a round of applause. And we don't know who it is. But to tell you the truth, to free Julian Assange and any other political prisoner requires your help financially. So I'm going to do a bit of an unusual fun pitch now, and I want you all to chip in while our monitors sort of circulate around. Let me start by asking if there's anyone in the audience who can contribute $1,000 to free Julian Assange. Don't feel shy. Alice Walker, $1,000. Thank you, Alice Walker. Let's go and get realistic. Who can contribute $500? There's 1. There's 2. I'm 3 on 500. There's 4 on 500. There's 5 on 500. Anybody else for $500? You can make your check payable to Courage Corp. Courage Corporation. Write it out. It's not tax deductible, but if you insist on a tax deductible check, we do have a 501c3 that is online that we can connect you with. So we were at $500, and how many did we have? 5 people, that's $2,500. 1,000 from Alice is $3,500 so far. And we raised $1,000 last night. That's $4,500. Who can contribute $250 to free Julian Assange? Let me see your hand. 1. Anybody else? $250. I didn't see it. 2, thank you. Anybody else? 2, that's another 500. So up to, what did I say, 4,500? 35, 45. We're up to $5,000. Did you say 250? What? Okay, you be the counter. Thanks. So we're up to $5,000. And what was the last 250? How about $200? Anybody in at 200? 1.
Excuse me, what about credit cards and sending in? How would you know?
Say it again?
Credit cards, is there like
I'm sorry, we don't have credit card facility, but you can contact us later and give us your name and we'll arrange it. Okay, so we have 1 at 200. $100. Who can kick in 100? Let's see a sea of hands. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Any more? $500, $600, Rick Sterling already contributed 100, so that's okay. Anybody else? That's another 600. $50. Any takers at 50? At 25? Were you scratching your face or is that 25? Okay, how about $10? Fantastic. 2, 3, 4, 5. Any more? 6. 6. So it's another 60. Okay, our collectors are going around. Please put in anything you can, whether it be $1 or 50 cents. It is appreciated. What's the total roughly? How much? Okay, that's 5760. That doesn't count the money we collected at the door. So that's at least another 2,000 or 1,000. So we're up to $7,000. How about a round of applause for everybody? And thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Our next speaker was supposed to be Dennis Bernstein, the host of KPFA's Flashpoints, and he fell ill. He really wanted to be here with us. He's been a champion of Julian Assange. He's had it on KPFA over and over again. And Dennis is a tireless fighter for every cause that benefits humanity. Do we have, Steve, the tape of Joe Lombardo?
I didn't get that from Nathan. I have Chomsky.
Right.
And that was the we played the other two.
Okay, I'm sorry. Apologies, Joe Lombardo. We had a 6-minute tape. We will send it out via email. He's the national coordinator of United National Anti-War Coalition. And now, without further ado, Nozomi Nyashi, a too modest, magnificent writer, the author of the new book, WikiLeaks, The Global Fourth Estate, History is Happening, Make History with Us Today. Now, welcome, Nozomi.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? In 1964, a group of students at UC Berkeley who were involved in the civil rights movement challenged the restriction of free speech rights on campus. Their protest spread nationwide, giving birth to the free speech movement. Mario Savio, who became a spokesperson for the movement, defined free speech as not a tactic, something to win for political advantage, but rather it was something that represents the very dignity of what it means to be a human. He urged his fellow students to fight against the oppression of the machine that was destroying this dignity. Over 50 years later, in spring of 2010, we've seen a flame of free speech rekindled on the internet. WikiLeaks blazed into a global stage with the publication of the Colorado Matter video. Uncensored images of modern war depicting US military airstrikes killing innocent civilians, including Reuters journalists, in a suburb of Iraq. Let people around the world see the faces of real victims of the US war on terror. WikiLeaks' publication of the Iraq war logs revealed the existence of an estimated 15,000 civilian casualties that were previously unknown. It has restored the dignity of those victims of senseless war. From the Icelandic Revolution to the Arab Spring and the Occupy movement, empowered by the WikiLeaks publications, ordinary people around the world began to take the course of their life into their own hands. Julian Assange and whistleblower Chelsea Manning took tremendous risk to stop the machine of US imperialism. They sacrificed their personal liberty so that we can create a truly democratic society in which each person's dignity is respected.
Stopping the US government's effort to extradite Julian is the first and very important step of creating a just society. And it requires our uncompromising courage. Standing up for Julian's freedom is to stand up for our right to free speech. It is to stand up for our own dignity. May each of us find strength within ourselves to defend the heart of what it means to be human. From here in the Bay Area, at the birthplace of the free speech movement, let us make our courage become contagious. Free Julian Assange.
Thank you, Nozomi Hayase. We'll now hear from the third national co-chair of AssangeDefense.org, the renowned linguist, intellectual, artist, man of principle, fighter for freedom, Noam Chomsky. Let's give him a hand.
Parents are now touring the United States, trying to bring people to understand the nature of the crime that's been committed against him and to appeal to the U.S. authorities to drop the charges, which is not sufficient in my opinion, should go on to honor him for what he has done for us. Assange performed a major service to the people of the United States, many others as well, by releasing to the public information of great value for understanding what is happening in the world. The value of the information is attested by the ways it has been widely used by journalists, by scholars, by the concerned public generally. Assange should be honored for this service. Instead, he has been brutally persecuted by British authorities, serving Washington's demand that he must be harshly punished for revealing what U.S. power wishes to be kept hidden for reasons of what's called security, which means security of the powerful from public awareness of their actions and their plans. This gross miscarriage of justice, prolonged over many cruel years, should be ended at once. Julian Assange should not only be freed, but should be accorded the great respect that he richly deserves for his contributions.
Thank you, Noam Chomsky. We'll now hear from the brother of Julian Assange, tireless young campaigner for his brother's freedom. Let's give a warm welcome to Gabriel Shipton.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Yeah, thanks to Jeff and Cynthia and Jeannie for getting this all together. It's a amazing turnout. I think everywhere. My father and I have been in the US since the beginning of June, and everywhere we've gone, we've seen this upwelling of support. From when we started out in Miami, up to New York, the East Coast, Boston, Philadelphia. Across to Chicago, Columbus, Denver. It's just really taken our breath away. Just people coming out, and that's really led to this sort of, there's been 30 or so articles since we started talking about Julian's case again. We've been on national news channels talking about Julian's case, dozens and dozens of local radio shows as we've travelled across the country. So, you know, it's really, you know, for something that nobody was talking about, you know, a few months ago, it's really amazing just to see that, you know, what you know, this sort of public support can bring, and the attention it can bring back to Julian's case, and what it means for press freedoms in the US and abroad. So I'll just update you where, so Julian won his extradition case in January. At the beginning of January, the judge found that if he was extradited to the US, he would likely commit suicide. So it was basically a death sentence. And on that basis, she rejected Julian's extradition. The US DOJ immediately appealed that decision, or signalled their intention to appeal. And then a few days later, Julian's bail was rejected on the 6th of January. So he is now in a maximum security prison. It's his third year in that prison on the outskirts of London. And it's been 6 months since he won his extradition hearing, and we still don't know when or whether an appeal will be heard. So he's sort of in this limbo. You know, I've said this before, but it becomes, when you go and see him. I went to see him in October, and it just becomes really evident that, you know, all the other prisoners, most of them have a sentence, and so they have something to aim for, and their families can plan, and they can, you know, make plans for homecoming parties or things like that. But in Julian's case, there is no sentence. He's an innocent man in a maximum security prison on remand, and we just don't know when it's going to end. And this is sort of just another form of punishment through process that Julian suffered under for the last 12 years now. And I know Jeff mentioned this earlier, but there's Stunden, this Icelandic publication, has come out with this story today that the major witness in the US DOJ's case has admitted to fabricating key accusations within the case. His name is Siggy Thordarson, and he's provided to Stunden chat logs which back up his claim of fabrication, which is, you know, this is really big, and you know, it just sort of tears the prosecution's whole case apart. And you know, these accusations, these false accusations, were all through the judgment, the January 4th judgment. So, you know, they were repeated by the judge. So this is really big news for Julian and for this case. I would just want to talk about a phenomena that we see. You know, this isn't just about Julian. This is about you know, press freedoms, and Julian's targeted and made an example of, so that everyone around the world can see. You know, if you publish this sort of thing, then, you know, this is what's going to happen to you. So what we've seen, you know, around the world over the last year is this sort of phenomena that, you know, when the State Department and the DOJ are confronting, the State Department are confronting overseas authoritarian states or totalitarian states on their human rights record or their press freedom record, or how they're treating their prisoners, they often get Assange thrown back in their face. You know, look what you're doing to Assange. How can you tell us, you know, how can you confront us on our human rights or our press freedoms? So we've seen this, you know, with the UK ambassador to Russia. The Russian ambassador to the UK asked about Navalny. He said, well, down the road, you've got Assange, a publisher, locked in prison. Who are you to confront us about our treatment of Navalny? Aliyev, who's a, you know, totalitarian leader in Azerbaijan, confronted on his record of press freedom and, you know, locking journalists in prison, torturing journalists, by a BBC interviewer. He said, "Who are you to ask me that? Look, you've got a journalist in prison in your country." The Chinese Foreign Affairs spokesperson recently, when they were confronted on their human rights and press freedoms in their country, brought up Assange. What about Assange? So I think one way the Biden administration can sort of reestablish this idea that the US has this moral high ground is to just drop this case and just let it go, and it will just send a message to all journalists. It will send a message to journalists all over the world, not just in the US. That they have this support. So in the US, what we've seen now is, I know, the mainstream media is not. We all know they're not. I guess we all see them for what they are. But it is in their interest to have this case dropped, and that's why we've seen, the executive editors from the Washington Post, executive editors from the New York Times, coming out and saying that this prosecution is a danger to the First Amendment, it's a danger to press freedom. We're seeing that because they have to consider, when they have a story that comes on their desk, a national security story, that they now have to consider, will this story land me an espionage prosecution? Will my journalists have an espionage prosecution if we publish this story? And that has a flow-on effect. So now we have the people who bring us these revelations, so say the Chelsea Manning of now, or a future Chelsea Manning, or Edward Snowden. They have to consider before they decide that they want to bring this information to us, how are they going to deliver it to us? They won't, if they take it to the New York Times, if they take it to the Washington Post, they know that these people cannot publish without the threat of an espionage prosecution. So it has this flow-on effect for all these, revelations that have been brought to us over the years. So I just want to leave you with that, and big thank you for everyone's generosity as well. That's absolutely amazing. And thanks again to all the organisers, and thank you.
That was Don Harmon, my comrade from Socialist Action, who, with others, organized the door collection. And he just sent me another note that in addition to the pledges that everybody raised their hand about, the bucket collection netted $623 more. So we did fantastic. And I'm going to ask Don, is it possible that you can count up the money collected at the door? All right, maybe we'll do it afterwards. Okay, I want to make an announcement. The Bay Area, Bay Action to freeassange.org is organizing an event we should all support. It's in solidarity with the global protest for Julian Assange on his 50th birthday. It's taking place at the British Consulate in San Francisco on July 3rd at 1 Sansom Street, San Francisco at 12:30 in the afternoon. Can we all try to attend that? That's July 3rd. What day of the week is that? Saturday, July 3rd, 12:30 p.m. at the British Consulate, Consulate General San Francisco, 1 Sansom Street. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is an amazing fellow. I met him for the first time last night, and he is an extremely worldly informed fighter for freedom and against war, U.S. imperialist war in particular. And I might add that in addition to the horrors that Julian released on the Iraq War, the United States conducted a war based on the lie that the Iraqi government had weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist, and they killed by sanctions and murder 1.5 million people. They killed 4 million people in Vietnam when they said that a Vietnamese sampan attacked an American destroyer. Their sanctions and horrors have killed 50,000 people in Venezuela because they had the nerve to conduct elections to elect their own president and run their own country, as opposed to it being run by the Rockefellers and the imperial powers. The United States, along with Israel, was the only nation on earth that voted last week to maintain the illegal sanctions against Cuba, because Cuba has insists on its right to self-determination, as all other oppressed nations. And the United States has conducted a vicious war against the Syrian people, with 500,000 people dead, and the U.S. organizing with NATO and the Gulf state monarchies a vicious illegal war that at one point occupied 3/4 of the Syrian population. And the polls, the Gallup poll in England, said the majority of the Syrian people support the government of that country. And 8% support the U.S. coalition of the willing that is slaughtering the Syrian people. We're proud to have Syria Solidarity movement on board today. So our slogan is U.S. out now, bring the troops home now, abolish the war budget. Our next speaker, I'm so proud to introduce, is Julian Assange's dad. Please give a warm welcome to John Shipton.
I've got a kiss and flowers. Well, when I scan here, look over all these lovely faces and the hospitality and generosity that's been extended to Gabrielle and I as we travel across the continental United States, I am hesitant to embark upon a criticism of the foreign policy of the United States. My heart is warmed. You saw Jeff and Gabrielle mention Ziggy in Iceland, the FBI witness. This is a part of a series of fabrications and falsities. In the first place, falling upon Julian. In the first place, issuing from the Swedish prosecuting authority. Sweden back in the 70s and 80s was known as a model society. Now it's simply a place with a declined stature of lawful administration and sells junk furniture that brought disgrace upon themselves. Disgrace. The Crown Prosecuting Service embarked upon a conspiracy with the Swedish Prosecuting Authority to keep Julian in the embassy for 7.5 years. Julian fought 2 cases in Sweden to forward the case. The Swedish Prosecuting Authority under Marianne Nye and the Crown Prosecuting Service under Paul Close conspired together. We have the evidence. Stefania Morizzi, under a series of FOIs brought in the British courts, revealed the details of their conspiracy together in order to keep Julian in the embassy. Silly quotes. You're not getting cold feet, are you? That's addressed by Paul Close, the UK, to Marianne Nye, Sweden. Julian asked, could he leave Sweden? And Marianne Nye said, yes, that's fine, you can leave. And immediately Julian got on the plane. They stole all his computers. He landed in London. Marianne Nye issued a red notice. A red notice is issued through Interpol for the foulest of criminals, a red notice for a publisher and a journalist. It's grotesque. The Crown Prosecuting Service, in its show trial of Julian Assange back in September, have brought disgrace upon themselves. Disgrace upon a nation in a show trial, unnecessary. The Australian government acquiesces, doesn't do anything. Acquiescence over time accumulates to complicity, brings disgrace upon itself. The Australian government thinks that state-to-state arrangements make the Australian polity secure, when in fact what makes the polity secure is a unification behind the government in the belief that the government will act in the interests of any citizen who is unfairly done by. That's where strength lays. Not in some arrangements over a glass of wine between the Australian Foreign Minister and the Secretary of State. These things are important. The persecution of Julian, first of all, there was the Conventions of Asylum. 1958, they were put in place in the United Nations. 1973, under the authorship of Australia, they were ratified by the United Nations General Assembly, a massive majority. At that time, there were 10,000 people in missions in asylum in Santiago as Pinochet began murdering anybody who was in a union, anybody they didn't like. Lawlessness. Julian became an asylee. In that asylum was removed arbitrarily. You can't do that. There's a process, a lawful process to remove an asylum. 6 policemen broke into the embassy. They opened the door and Julian was dragged out. 3 hours later, a confused man was put before a trial judge who said, "Oh, you're a narcissist." This judge, you would assume, had a law distinction, not a distinction in psychology. All of these insults, prejudices and persecution were put together in a document by Professor Nils Melzer, Professor of Law at Glasgow University and United Nations Rapporteur on Torture and Unusual Punishment, after a visit of 3 hours length with 2 medical experts that evaluated Julian to see his conditions and concluded that he was a victim of psychological torture over a period of 7.5 years of calumnies, mobbings, smearings, fabrications, lies. That report submitted to the appropriate authorities in Sweden and the United Kingdom was ignored. No answers were given. The United Nations Working Group put together a report which declared that Julian was arbitrarily detained, ought to be released, to allowed to take up the asylum offered by Ecuador and compensated by United Kingdom and Sweden. It was derided. They put out a supplementary report in 2018, February, equally derided. The United Nations came into being in 1946. In 1948, Eleanor Roosevelt chaired the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The first president of the United States, Herbert Vere Everett, an Australian. this great, magnificent civil structure which allows states to negotiate in conversation their interests, preventing the outbreak of war, is ignored and forced to near collapse. Iraq war, illegal. I'll say that again, the Iraq war, the murder of 1 million people, the destruction of all of its infrastructure, illegal war. This magnificent structure, for some reason or other, and I call it despair when nation states do this, because they cannot any longer find within their bosoms the capacity to negotiate the human and understand each other and negotiate a way through competing interests. I call it despair. That's what I call it. Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning released, as has been mentioned, the diplomatic cables, the Iraq war files, the Afghan war files, 10 years ago, the Guantanamo Bay file. The great American lawyer Clive Stafford Smith, a man with a giant heart, put together an NGO called Reprieve and went to Guantanamo Bay armed. He was armed with those cables. They're all in searchable form. Any of us can go online and search those cables, 250,000 of them, plus the Kissinger cables, and evaluate for ourselves and declare amongst each other and our friends and companions and raise the level by so doing. That's the CIA. No. Raise the level of our understanding and consequently improve. That must be the FBI. Consequently improve the quality of governance. 10 years went by and slowly the information in those Afghan war files, the Iraq war, the diplomatic cable, slowly it percolates its way through the polity, through us, and our understanding causes the government to remove the troops from Afghanistan, to contemplate and move towards closing Guantanamo Bay and ending the Iraq war. The Iraq war, how did that end? One of the cables described a circumstance in 2006 where a group of American soldiers, I don't much like accusation, so I don't want to burden those men's conscience any further. Occupying forces, pacifying a country that's resisting, are always in a state of extreme agitation and fear. In particular, in Iraq, the IEDs would blow their testicles off because they explode upwards. It's not much fun, you know, and they lose their legs. So they're always in an agitated, fearful state, and they carry guns. Fear and guns means, well, you know the result. They went into a house and murdered the entire occupants, the mum and dad and grandfather, the whole extended family, the children. Contemplating this crime, they called in an airstrike, which destroyed the house and obliterated all evidence of that family from the earth forever. Upon reading the cable, the Iraqi government and the Iraqi people gathered up their courage. They had been destroyed, community, gathered up their courage and their unity and refused to sign the Status of Forces Agreement as a consequence. The United States and its allies, one of which is Australia, removed all their forces. from Iraq War. Leaks stop wars. In the case of Clive Stafford Smith, leaks bring justice. In the overall sense, in the trajectory of time, leaks have caused the removal of troops from Afghanistan, the closure of Guantanamo Bay, and the end of the war in Iraq. Now that congratulations not only goes to Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and the staff of WikiLeaks, it goes to yourselves, because it's your understanding that causes the government its anxiety and to close and end these wars. That is our understanding. What rough beast its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. So I've described the circumstances of that growth of bestiality. Now, with the freedom of Julian, and it will come, and the renewal of the United Nations, we can say to ourselves, once more, we emerge to see the stars. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A special thanks, minus the technical interruptions, to Steve Poikinen, who has followed and volunteered for nothing to tape and video and do the transmission of all of the meetings that he could on his own dime with his own car and his own team. Steve Poikinen, thank you. Okay, I want to say something else. This whole rental cost $1,000 and cost us a couple of hundred for the Nebel Proctor library last night, but we didn't have to pay for it because 13 people on their own contributed roughly $100 each to pay all the expenses in advance of the tour. So all of the proceeds with zero deductions go to the Assange defense. I think that's pretty darn good. So with that, I've asked Nathan Fuller to send me the address to mail your checks to, because someone asked for that address. Who needs it? If you want to mail checks, 1, 2, 3. So come up in a few minutes, we'll give you the address to mail it to. And meanwhile, a warm and hearty and loving thanks to all of you for a magnificent participation, building effort, working together in a united way to free Julian Assange and defend the First Amendment, free speech, free journalists, bring him home. Thank you for coming. Give yourself a round of applause. Free Julian Assange. 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 Julian Assange. Thank you. I forgot, sign the mailing list if you want to continue to be involved. And we'll call it a day, an hour and 40 minutes, minus 15 minutes that Alice Walker was late for. Thank you, John and Gabriel. Thank you, Alice Nyashi. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, all of our speakers. With love and solidarity, we'll win this struggle. Let's stay in there.